Okay, I think we are live. Are we live, sir? See, there is a certain amount of lag. I figured out the only way I can kind of not have the fan come, like the noise be it's so incessant in the background is if I just hold the mic right up to my mouth. Okay, I can see we're live. What's up, everyone? As you can see from the title, this is a live stream, or rather, a series of live streams where I'm going to read The Entire Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. I'd seen on Twitter someone was like, nobody reads Adam Smith, or like, I forgot where I saw this. I was like, fuck it, fudge it, let me try reading it. And I'll just preface this by saying I'm dyslexic. I find it really hard to read, and I've got ADHD and a bunch of things. My pronunciation isn't great. So, this is more so an experiment in my reading and my comprehension too. Pretty selfish, I guess. Okay, if I mess all of that, let's start. And try to go for at least half an hour. Let me just set a timer on my iPad out here. Okay, 30 minutes has started. Book 1 of the causes of improvement in the productive powers of labor and of the order according to which its produce is naturally distributed among the different ranks of people. Chapter 1 on the division of labor. The greatest improvement in the productive powers of labor and the greater part of the skill, dexterity, and judgment with which is anywhere directed or applied seem to have been the effects of the division of labor. The effects of the division of labor in the general business of society will be more easily understood by considering in what manner it operates in some particular manufacturers. It is commonly supposed to be carried furthest in some very trifling ones, not perhaps that it really is carried further in them than in others of more importance, but in those trifling is this trifling? But in those trifling manufacturers. Yep, it's trifling means unimportant or trivial. But in those trifling manufacturers which are destined to supply the small wants of but a small number of people, the whole number of workmen must necessarily be small, and those employed in every different branch of the work can often be collected into the same workhouse and placed at one under the view of the spectator. In those great manufacturers on the contrary, which are destined to supply the great wants of the body of the people, every different branch of the work employs so great a number of workmen that it is impossible to collect them all into the same workhouse. We can seldom see more at one time than those employed in one single branch. Though in such manufacturers, therefore, the work may really be divided into much greater number of parts than in those of a more trifling nature. The division is not near so obvious and has accordingly been much less observed. To take for example, therefore, from a very trifling manufacturer, but one in which the division of labor has been very often taken notice of, the trade of the pin maker. A woman, a workman not educated to the business, which is the division of labor, has rendered a distinct trade, nor acquainted with the use of machinery employed in it, to the invention of which the same division of labor has probably given occasion, could scarce, perhaps, with with his utmost industry, make one pin a day, and certainly could not make 20. But in the way in which this business is now carried on, not only the whole work is a peculiar trade, but it is divided into number of branches, of which the greater part are likewise peculiar trades. One man draws out the wire, another straightens it, a third cuts it, a fourth points it, a fifth grinds it at the top for receiving the head. To make the head requires two or three distinct operations. To put it on its to put it on is a peculiar business. To whiten the pins is another. It is even trade by itself to put them into the paper, and the important business of making pins is in this manner divided into about 18 distinct operations, which in some manufactories are performed by distinct hands, though in others the same man will sometimes perform two or three of them. I have seen a small manufactory of this kind where 10 men only were employed, and where some of them consequently performed two or three distinct operations. But though they were very poor, and therefore but indifferently but indifferently accommodated with the necessary machinery, they could, when they exerted themselves, make among them about 12 pounds of pins in a day. There are in a pound upwards 4,000 pins of middling size. Those 10 persons therefore could make among them upwards of 48,000 pins a day. Each person therefore making a tenth part of 48,000 pins might be considered as making 4,800 pins a day. But if they had all wrought, that means worked separately and independently, just a second, let me. And independently, and without any of them having been educated to this peculiar business, they certainly could not each of them have made 20, perhaps not even a pin a day. That is certainly not what the 240th, perhaps, nor not the 4,800th part of what they are at present capable of performing, in consequence of proper division and combination of their different operations. In every other art and manufacture, the effects of the division of labor are similar to what they are in this very trifling one. Though in many of them the labor can neither be so much subdivided nor reduced to great simplicity of operation. The division of labor, however, so far as it can be introduced, occasions in every art proportionable increase of productive powers of labor. The separation of different trades and employments. Shit, I'm getting a call. The separation of different trades and employments from one other seems to have taken place in consequence of this advantage. This separation too is generally called furthest in those countries which enjoy highest degree of industry and improvement. What is the work of one man in a rude state of society, being generally that of a farmer? The manufacturer, nothing but a manufacturer. The labor, too, which is necessary to produce any one complete manufacturer, is almost always divided among a great number of hands. How many different trades are employed in each branch of the linen and woolen manufacturers, from growers to the flax, from growers of the flax and the wool to the bleachers and smoothers of the linen, or to the dyers and dressers of the cloth. The nature of agriculture, indeed, does not admit of so many subdivisions of labor, nor of so complete a separation of one business from another. As manufacturers, it is impossible to separate so entirely the business of the grazer from that of the corn farmer. as the trade of the carpenter is commonly separated from that of the smith. The spinner is almost always a distinct person from the weaver, but the plowman, the harrower, the sower of the seed, and the reaper of the corn are often the same. The occasions for those different sorts of labor returning with different seasons of the year, it is impossible that one man should be constantly employed in any one of them. This impossibility of making so complete an entire separation of all the different branches of labor employed in agriculture is perhaps the reason why the improvement of the productive powers of labor in this art does not always keep pace with the improvements in manufacturers. The most opulent nations indeed generally excel in their neighbors in agriculture as well as in manufacturers, but they are commonly more distinguished by their superiority in the latter than the former. Their hands are in general better cultivated and their lands, not hands, I apologize. Their lands are in general better cultivated and having more labor and expense bestowed upon them produce more proportion to extent and natural fertility of the ground. But the superiority of produce is seldom more than in proportion to the superiority of labor and expense. In agriculture, the labor of the rich country is not always much more productive than of the poor, or at least is never so much more productive as it commonly is in manufacturers. The corn of the rich country, therefore, will not always, in the same degree of goodness, come cheaper to the market than of the poor. The corn of Poland, in the same degree of goodness, is cheap as that of France, notwithstanding the superior opulence of improvement of the latter country. The corn of France is in the corn provinces fully as good as in most years nearly about the same price with the corn of England. Though in opulence and improvement France is perhaps inferior to England, the corn lands of England, however, are better cultivated than those of France, and the corn lands of France are said to be much more cultivated than those of Poland. But though the poor country, notwithstanding the inferiority of its cultivation, can in some measure rival the rich in the cheapness of the goods of corn, it can pretend to no such competition in its manufacturers, at least if those manufacturers suit the soil, climate, and situation of the rich country. The silks of France are better and cheaper than those of England, because the silk manufacturer, at least under the present high duties upon the importation of raw silk, does not do so well in the climate of England as that of France. But the hardware and coarse villains of England are beyond all comparison superior to those of France and much cheaper to the same degree of goodness. In Poland, there are said to be scarce any manufacturers of any kind, a few of the coarse household manufacturers without accepted, without which no country can can well subsist. Okay, we're going for 13 minutes. Nobody has seen us live. Anyway, let's do this page and then I'll stop. The great increase of the quantity of work, which in the consequence of the division of labor, the same number of people are capable of performing, is owing to the three different circumstances. First, to the increase of dexterity in every particular workman. Second, to the saving of time, which is commonly lost in passing from one species of work to the other. And lastly, to the invention of a great number of machines which facilitate and abridge labor and enable one man to do the work of many. First, the improvement of dexterity of the workman necessarily increases the quality of the work which work he can perform, and the division of labor by reducing every man's business to some one simple operation and by making the operation the sole employment of his life necessarily increased very much dexterity of the workman. The common smith thought who is though accustomed to handle the hammer has never been used to making nails. If upon some particular occasion he is obliged to attempt it, will scare, I am assured, be able to make above 2 or 300 nails a day, and those two very bad ones. A smith who has been accustomed to make nails, but whose sole principal business has not been that of a nailer, can seldom with his utmost diligence make more than 800 or 1,000 nails in a day. I've seen several boys under 22 years of age who have never exercised any other trade but that of making nails, and who, when they exerted themselves, could make each of them upwards of 2,000 to 3,000 nails a day. The making of a nail, however, is by no means one of the simplest operations. The same person blows the bellows, stirs or mends the fire as there is occasion, heats the iron and forges every part of the nail. In forging the head too, he is obliged to change his tools. The different operations into which the making of a pin or of a metal button is subdivided are all of them much more simple, and the dexterity of the person whose life it has been the sole business to perform them is usually much greater. The rapidity with which some of the operations of the manufacturers are performed exceeds what the human hand could do by those who have never seen them be supposed capable of acquiring. Okay, I'll continue from the second advantage tomorrow. I think it's 15 minutes of reading. Yeah, I think I made a lot of mistakes today, but tomorrow we're going to be much more confident, and we're going to read properly. So see you guys tomorrow. Bye.